Paul, thank you very much for accepting this interview with L'Impertinent. My first question is pretty easy. I would like to know how you're doing.
Oh, doing fine. Got back in time for Christmas with my children, so that all worked out really well.
And why did they let you go?
Well, the Greenland court ruled that I should be extradited, but it was a political decision by the Attorney General in Denmark. They were in a difficult situation. Do we keep Japan happy or do we keep the French happy? You know, but I think that if they look at just the rules for extradition, they really couldn't do it because it was a minor charge. It was 14 years old. Japan could not give them any guarantees on what they would do, whether I'd get a fair trial or not. And so I don't think there was any other choice because if they had have said you're going to be extradited, then we would have appealed it to the Supreme Court in Denmark and then on to the European Commission on Human Rights. So it would have gone on for a long time.
Mm.
And Denmark was coming under an awful lot of pressure from people all over the world and from President Macron, from President Lula da Silva of Brazil, the president of French Polynesia, Bernie Sanders, the Senator Bernie Sanders on that. And he even got a letter from the Pope.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But did the American government did something as well? Because I know you're an American citizen and they don't let their
The,
citizen being extradited like that.
the U.S. Embassy in Copenhagen was very helpful on
Mm.
that. Canada was
Okay.
useless, but
Oh, really? Okay, but why did they kept you that long? Like it's 149 days with monthly hearing that seem to have always the same outcome. What was that about?
well, I think it was the political nature of it. They just it took them 2.5 months before they even would do an interrogation by the police, and 3 months before they would even look at any of the evidence that we presented. So they were just dragging their feet on this because they really didn't know what kind of decision to make. Uh,
Mm.
then they had to find a way to do this without offending Japan, and so I think the Attorney General of Denmark was going on about, well, Japan has a very fair and democratic system, which it doesn't. It's been condemned by Amnesty International and other human rights groups, but he couldn't say that, of course. So they had to come down to all these little technicalities. Apparently, it was a 65-page justification for the decision.
Do they have commercial partnership, do you think?
Oh, one of the things Japan did do was was to threaten Denmark with canceling a hundreds of million-dollar offshore wind turbine project if they didn't turn me over. Of course, it was all bluff. They're not going to do that. But they also threatened France. The mayor of Nice, they said that he had to take my picture down off the city hall, and or else Japan was not going to participate in the ocean conference in 2025. And they also threatened trade embargoes on France. So, you know, this is very unusual demands for something which is supposed to be a criminal operation and really shows how political it is.
Mm. But did the judge finally accepted to see the evidence in favor of your innocence? Because from what I gather, at first the judge didn't want it to see the videos and the proofs.
He actually just passed it over to the Justice Department in Denmark, and so I guess they reviewed the evidence, but he didn't really do anything at all. The prosecutor in the case, she was extremely hostile. I mean, her description of me when I first went in there was that I was a armed and dangerous terrorist who was a threat to society, and on and on. But throughout the whole trial, she was extremely angry and hostile.
Okay, I see. Well, it's kind of a role as well, I guess.
Yeah, but she was going way over the top. For instance, when the judge ordered me detained for another 30 days, she looked across and gave me this smirk, like this smile, like, huh, you're not going anywhere, that kind of thing.
Okay, like as if it were personal.
She treated it like it was personal. Like, for instance, every time the court session was over, she would get to the police and said, "Don't let him talk to the media. Don't let him talk to anybody." And actually, it got to the point where even the police weren't listening to her, so I'd leave the courtroom and talk to the media.
And were you treated differently than the other prisoners? Because apparently you didn't have access to the computers and stuff like that.
No, I wasn't treated any different. I have to say that the prison itself was quite decent. I was the only non-indigenous person, the only non Greenlandic person in on that cell block I was at, and they were all the prisoners were very friendly, very supportive. The guards were friendly and supportive. So, as prisons go, it was sort of like a hotel, really.
Okay.
One
But
one
yeah.
of the strangest things in there was that they don't have meals in that prison. Every Wednesday they give us 1,350 kroner, about 180 euros, which they give us, and you go to the prison store, buy your own food, and there's a common kitchen. You prepare your own meals, so that made things look pretty easy.
Mm. And what do you know about Macron's intervention on your behalf?
He right from the beginning, he came out and said that he contacted Denmark and said that he wanted to see me released on that, and I asked for political asylum in France, and he said he would do that. He would give that to us. Also, the Prime Minister Michel yeah, he not only supported, he actually sent a letter to Denmark saying that they could not legally um, extradite me because it was of the political implications of it. And when I returned, and we had the rally at the Place de la Republique, he came and personally to speak with me. It was very sweet.
Yes, very supportive. Yeah, I saw the picture. So what did you guys say?
Well, he
Is
just said if he can help in the future on anything to let him know.
Hmm.
The mayor of Nice called me and said that they're going to give me an honorary citizenship to the city of Nice, and I got one on December 10th, honorary citizenship to Paris on that. So that was nice. And now I'm gonna, get apply for citizenship to France, which the president said shouldn't be any problem. So we'll see.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, and yeah, so everything worked out really. Actually, the way I look on it from a positive point of view is that when I got arrested, that began a new campaign to continue to focus attention on Japan's illegal whaling operations, with the added benefit of focusing attention on the killing of pilot whales and dolphins in the Faroe Islands. So it was all worthwhile.
Wasn't this the best publicity campaign Sea Shepherd could ever have?
Yeah, and it's interesting that Samuel Johnson, this English writer, once wrote, he said, a jail is better than a ship because there's no risk of drowning. Because basically you're in the same thing, you're on prison on a ship. But when I looked out the window of my cell, I saw pretty much what I saw in the Southern Ocean. I saw the fjord, the mountains, the ice, and occasionally whales.
Yeah, you could have been in a worse place for sure. But Japan has vowed to relentlessly track you wherever you go. Will this threat impact your work? Will you avoid Norway, for instance, or one of the three countries that still practice whaling in violation of international treaties?
They've been trying to get me for, what, 14 years. But what we're going to do in the new year is confront Interpol directly. Both, I'm going to go to Lyon and the headquarters of Interpol and demand that they justify what they're doing. And at the same time, we have lawyers who are working to expose Interpol's abuse of their authority for political purposes. My case has actually been cited as an example into investigations of abuse by Interpol since 2017. And Interpol has come under an awful lot of criticism for, it's not just my case, it's hundreds of cases where governments have used Interpol as a way to stop dissent and for political purposes. Red notices are for serial killers and war criminals and major drug traffickers. They're not there for trespassing or even conspiracy to trespass as they charged me with.
Mhm. But how does it work? Like it's Japan who ask Interpol to put a red notice on you, and then they all have to follow the rules and like.
Well, they don't have to. Japan requests Interpol to issue a red notice. That goes out to 196 countries. Those countries don't have to act on this. For instance, when the US wouldn't act on it, France wouldn't act on it. When I entered Ireland in June, I went through the computer, they didn't do anything. So the countries can choose to do it. So in this case, Denmark chose to do something. Also, it was a little sneaky because Japan had removed me from the Interpol computer. And then they specifically sent this request to Denmark. And so it was because of Denmark. But, it's hard to say which countries would act and which countries won't. But we got to get to the bottom of that. And the best thing to do is confront Interpol directly. And meanwhile, I mean, the ships can still go out, whether I'm there or not. The John Paul de Joria is in Bermuda, and it'll be ready to go back to Iceland in June.
Mhm.
Bandero is in Melbourne, and if Japan goes to the Southern Ocean, it'll be in a position to intervene against them down there.
Okay. Did you feel like the Greenlandic authorities and population were aware of your situation?
Oh,
Well,
they're very much aware of it. There's a lot of publicity there. I was signing autographs in prison, and after I came out, and I was a day and a half in Nook, just walking around, everybody was friendly, supportive. I didn't see any hostility from anybody while I was in Greenland at all. Also, you have to keep in mind that the Greenlanders do not like Denmark.
oh, really?
They view Denmark as a colonial occupier, and
Interesting.
so they're not very popular on that.
But what happens if you don't manage to take your name out of the list? Like, will you stay out of those countries or?
Yeah, I can go between the U.S., Canada, no, the U.S. and France and Ireland, and Brazil. I'm fine.
Hmm,
So,
okay. So now
so
you will be more cautious about that if your name is still on the list.
yeah, I think most of the European countries are okay. Switzerland would be fine, but not the Scandinavian countries.
Mhm.
And I don't trust the UK because after the experience with Julian Assange,
Yeah, I see. I heard you, I mean, you say that on TV, that you received support from the Japanese people.
I received about 4,500 letters. Every week I got a big giant batch of letters. The guard said they'd never seen anything like that before. And a couple of dozen letters from Japan, all supportive. In fact, during that time, of all those 4,500 letters, I didn't get one critical or hostile letter. They were all very supportive. About 70% of them came from France, Switzerland, and Belgium, the French-speaking countries. But there were in total about 45 countries altogether.
How does that make you feel?
It was very, uplifting. Except I look on it as this is really a support for what we're doing. People want to make sure that the whales are protected in that, and I'm pretty much just a symbol for the protection of the whales on that. So that's the way I viewed that anyway. Uh,
Mm.
Hundreds and hundreds of children sent me drawings of whales and things like that. So, but that's really what it was about the movement, about the whales, and the dolphins. James Cameron and Martin Sheen did a video. Pierce Brosnan did a video. Uh, Jane Goodall sent me a letter to the prison. Sylvie Earle was very supportive. Bridget Bardot was very supportive. Um, God, there's so many people. Even Richard Branson, which was surprising to me why he was doing that. It's very. Oh, and Cheaper Aoni, but the Amazon did a video too on that.
I didn't see any reaction from Pamela Anderson, though.
Pamela Anderson's been very quiet on every front. I don't really know why, but I know she's supportive.
Yeah. Um, have you received any help from Sea Shepherd Global?
No, no. I was a little irritated that when I was released, they put a banner saying Paul Watson is free and blah, well, but I do know that during the time I was in prison that they were accepting donations for my defense because I received letters from people saying that they had contributed to Sea Shepherd Germany and Sea Shepherd Italy, and that. So
Mm.
they were taking the money, but they weren't doing anything.
So realize that the subject of the split seems to make journalists uncomfortable. They don't talk much about it. Why do you think this is? Should it remain an internal issue that only concerns internal people?
I don't know why. I think that where it's going to actually explode is the Sea Shepherd Global's partnership with Yamasek, the Israeli security firm. There's a lot of illegal aspects to that. So that's under investigation in the French courts. So we'll see where that goes.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of very strange business stuff going on with Sea Shepherd Global. And, they have their alliance with Allianz Insurance and Lloyd's of London and the Dutch Postal Code Lottery and these various companies that are making surfboards or whatever. It's all become a very mer mercantile sort of business, really.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Nakars, who was one of our crew members, Alex Cornelison sent him a letter and said, well, Paul hasn't been involved with Sea Shepherd since 2010, and we did all the work, and we deserve to run this. But that's simply not true because up until 2019, I was organizing all of those projects, Milagro and Operation Virus Hunter and the Caribbean campaigns. I was organizing all those. So it's a blatant lie for them to say that I wasn't doing anything. In fact, and the interesting thing about it is that in the last 2 years, I don't know anything that they've done. They've sent a ship down every year to the Southern Ocean to take pictures of fishing boats. But Nat Geo and Greenpeace had already done that. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't see what they're trying to achieve there.
Yeah.
My big problem was when I set up Sea Shepherd, I set it up as a movement, and I didn't want anybody to control it, including me. It was all these national entities working together and everything. I didn't really envision people betraying those principles and then claiming ownership. Sea Shepherd was never meant to be controlled by four individuals. They're making they're profiting by it personally. I mean, they pay themselves pretty high wages and get all the benefits and everything like this, and do very little as in respect. They're really con artists who've taken over. And what really bothers me is that I've known these people for 10 to 20 years, and I thought that I could have trusted them.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I feel sorry for them because they have to live with this, and they're constantly being accused for what they are as traitors and deceitful and liars.
It doesn't seem to be a really comfortable position for sure. About the Yamasek IDF position on boats, so L'Impertinent made an article about that. I think you read it. Were you not aware that Global was hiring Yamasek soldier?
Both Lamia and
IDF?
I were not made aware of that. We were on the board at the time when Peter Hammerstead made those deals. He and Alex Cornelison made the deals with Yamasek. We were not aware of it.
Okay.
And we said at the trial in Netherlands when we were, saying we were illegally dismissed, that we wanted to have access to the papers that, where that deal was made, and we still haven't been given that access. We won that case. They had to pay legal costs of 25,000 euros, which they still haven't paid. The other things that we were unaware of, and we kept asking, especially Lamy was on them, what are you doing in Africa? You say you arrest these ships. What happens to these ships? Are they fined? Are they seized? They just nothing. There's no information ever forthcoming. And
Mhm.
what we've found out is that these aren't big fishing boats. These aren't super trawlers. These are small African boats that it looks good. Oh yeah, we've arrested 85 fishing boats, but every single one of them are small African fishing boats. You know, so it's really a way of pretending to actually do something, bringing in a lot of money for stopping poachers when in fact they're doing very little at all.
Mhm. Um,
The
and
other, yeah, and I can't figure out if you Google Peter Hammerstead, it doesn't say what is he doing. You don't. There's no
he's a
information.
campaign manager.
Yeah, but what campaigns? You don't see any information online about what they're doing.
Mhm.
I know we got them out of Namibia because we kept accusing them. So what are you doing in Namibia? One of the second largest seal hunt in the world is in Namibia. You're getting a free dock from the Namibian government, and you're only 100 miles away from where the seals are being killed, and you're saying nothing and you're doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, they ended up having to leave Namibia because I think they're blaming me because I was putting too much attention on the seal hunt, and the Namibians got angry and kicked them out.
Mhm. Yeah, from what I understood, also they reacted this way because you exposed them really publicly on the social medias
Yeah.
with inside, do you think it was do you regret doing this strategy, or do you think it was
I had to expose them. They were doing nothing. They were getting a free dock and not doing anything at all. And in fact, it was a little dangerous for us because we had a crew go in there to with drones to document what was happening there. And so we were concerned that if the Sea Shepherd crew found out that we were there, they would give that information over to the Namibians. So we just thought it was a dangerous situation having them there in Namibia while we were trying to do undercover work.
Mm. And on a more philosophical level, does saving the world require more martyrs or heroes?
I don't think anything requires martyrs, really, but I think it does require people with the courage and the passion and the imagination to get involved on many, many levels. I mean, there's the strength of an ecosystem is diversity. The strength of any movement has to be diversity, and also interdependence. That means that there's literally thousands and thousands of issues that need to be addressed by thousands and thousands of people. And it can be addressed in through education or litigation or legislation or through direct intervention. It's all part of the same movement. There's no need for anybody to compete with anybody else. And just go where your talents are, writing or filmmaking or legal or whatever. And that's all people have to do.
And between now and your death, the time of your death, what is the main project, the more important thing for you to do? What's your main goal?
All my life, my ambition was to eradicate whaling all over the world. And we've done a good job over the last 50 years. So when I began, whaling was happening in Australia and Spain and South Africa, South Korea, Peru, Chile. All those countries have shut down, and it's only now Norway and Iceland and Japan. So we come a long way, and I think that we're going to be able to finish that at some point. One of the things I'm involved in now going forward is this new project of the possibility of interspecies communication with whales. Last year, there was successful research in the Bering Sea in communication with humpbacks, and now we're moving into a real solid scientific effort to communicate with sperm whales. And using computers and AI and everything, I think it's achievable. That would be an incredible breakthrough. If we can communicate with whales, that'll put an end to any whaling operations by Japan or anyway. It just morally, ethically, they would never be able to justify it if we were. So I think that to me is right now is the most important thing that we can strive towards is that kind of interspecies communication with whales. I also happen to believe that we're on the breakthrough of communicating with other species too. For instance, we've been able to learn more about the language of birds and how more complicated it is than we thought it was. And we've also discovered that trees communicate with each other through a fungal network underground and everything. So I believe that pretty much all species are capable of communication and that. Now the thing is to make it for cross-species communications between people and whales, for example.
Mhm.
We've already discovered that, like chimpanzees, for instance, can communicate through sign language and that. So that has been achieved on that level.
Okay. Um, I have a few questions for my readers because I asked them to ask questions. So the first one is how do you find the strength to continue your fight, and how do you leave such injustice like the one you just endure?
Well, I think you have to have a bit of a stoic nature. That is, you accept things as they are. And, I always say one of the sayings that has gotten me through life most of the time is this, it's always something. And if it isn't something, it's something else, but it's always something. So you just have to deal with the something as it comes along. Also, every situation provides an opportunity. And in this particular situation, the opportunity was to use the jail time to focus attention on Japan and Faroese whaling. So, and as far as getting, I mean, if you're alive, you're alive, and you do what you have to do. uh, yeah, I think the one most motivating factor of this is that we don't live on this planet with a dead ocean. So I think it's a responsibility of everybody to do everything they can to make sure that the ecological integrity of the ocean is protected.
How to sensibilize the young ones in school to the emergency of saving oceans?
Well, of course, that approach is an educational one, which is very, very important. One of the things that I've been doing is writing children's books. I did one last year, We Are the Ocean, and now I'm working on one called Spaceship Earth or Starship Earth, actually, about all the other species that are engineers on the supporting the life support system. That I think it's really important to reach children. The younger the better, to just impart this biocentric message that we're all part of nature and everything is interdependent. And I think children intuitively understand that. So,
Mm.
so it's very important to. Also, we're living in a world right now which is vastly different than the world that I was born in. Uh, my generation, 1950s, 60s, 70s, that was the wealthiest, materialistically, the wealthiest generation that ever existed. It's the freest generation that ever existed. And it won't happen again because we simply don't have the resources. When I was born, there were 3 billion people on the planet. Now there's close to 8 to 9 billion people on the planet. So the consumption of resources is escalated incredibly so. And society is far more complex. So I think that young people today don't have any choice but to be involved because it's their future which is threatened. When I was younger, I had a pretty good idea of what the world was going to be when I got older, but you can't say that anymore. You don't know what the world's going to be like in 2050, 2060, 2075.
Yeah, it kind of is out of control.
And the other problem is that so many people are in denial. I wrote that book in 2015, Urgent, on climate change, and we're seeing it all around us every day, and yet people just are ignoring it. The hurricane that went through Florida, for instance, they were interviewing people on the streets, and they said, "Oh, well, that's because God doesn't like the fact that we're supporting homosexuals." I mean, that's the kind of attitude that they have. But we're seeing, I mean, just look at the fires and the floods and the earthquake. It's going to increase exponentially. Look what happened in Mayotte just this last week. Almost every single day there is an ecological disaster happening. Now, back in the 60s and 70s, that was a rarity. You'd have a hurricane come around every 20 years or something that would cause some damage, but that was simply unusual.
Mhm.
Now it's normal.
Yeah. Do you think we are doing, as a species, are we doing stuff to go to the right direction?
I don't think humanity is doing anything good, really. Uh, it's like that in my children's book on the life support system. I said, look, if you look at the planet as a spaceship that's on this incredible voyage around the Milky Way, that every spaceship has a life support system maintained by a crew of engineers, and those engineers keep everything running, and they provide the food we eat, they provide the oxygen and the air we breathe, they regulate climate and temperature. Everything from the plankton to the bees to the trees and all this, and yet we humans, we're passengers having a wonderful time amusing ourselves, but what we're doing is we're murdering the engineers, we're killing off the engineers. And there's only so many engineers you kill before the machinery begins to fall apart. And that somebody once asked me, well, is there anything that humans are good for? I said, well, there is one thing that we are good for, is that we do have the technological ability that if this planet is threatened by an incoming asteroid, like what happened 65 million years ago, we are the only species that could actually stop it. But that's pretty much our primary benefit to the planet.
Yeah, to survive.
But yeah, but the real problem is that about 10,000 years ago, we switched from a biocentric paradigm, which is that we're part of nature, we're connected to everything. We switched to this idea that it was all created for us. It's all about us. We're the only species that matters. Everything else is irrelevant. And that anthropocentric attitude, I think, is the most destructive force that we've unleashed on the planet. If you take a look, if you put the entire history of the universe into 1 year from the Big Bang on, and look at where we fit into that, we're in the last couple of seconds of that year, and what was it? What was it? Christianity was invented about a hundredth of a second ago, and all the other religions follow suit. They're all anthropocentric religions. So what was going on for those 14 billion years prior to that? You know,
Mhm.
its life was going on quite well without us, constantly evolving, constantly changing, and everything. And really, when it comes down to it, we're just stardust, just a bunch of atoms together that have consciousness.
Mhm.
I was at the University of Texas one time, and this one student, he said, "Well, we don't need all these other species. We have everything we need, and we don't need any other species." And I said, I'm looking at you. What do I see? I say, I don't see an individual. I see a symbiont community. There are about 1,700 species of viruses and microbes in your body right now that you couldn't live without. So you're a symbiont, you're a community. You're not this one individual that you think you are. If I were to strip away all the microbes and the viruses right now, probably take about half your body away from you. You know,
Yeah.
these viruses and these microbes, they digest your food, they groom your eyelashes, they keep your skin clean, they keep your hair clean, they keep your body running. So you can't live without them. So you can't say that we don't need all of these other species. And then when you go out into the real world, you can't live in a world without bees. You can't have agriculture. You can't live in a world without worms. You can't live without microbes on the soil. You can't live, you wouldn't be able to even make beer if you didn't have yeast, you know,
But why is it so difficult for people to understand that everything is connected?
because we've been conditioned to look in the world from an anthropocentric point of view. That
Mm.
it's all about us. We live with the fantasies, of well, the religion's probably the biggest fantasy of all, to believe that we're better than everything else. I just find it's a form of insanity that people actually believe the things they believe when it comes to religion.
Mm. Well, apparently, from what I gathered, the earliest days when religion was created, it was about the sun, and at this time that made more sense.
Well, the
Exactly.
sun actually, if there is a God, it is the sun because it
For
provides
sure.
everything you need. But we don't need to worship anything really. I mean, we just need to. Heaven is the planet. Hell is what we do to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also because people need a leader. They need to be, to have something to believe in because otherwise they're full of doubts. They need people to tell them what to do, what to think, and what to feel. And they forgot totally their own power and how much it can impact the world.
Well, we forget that we're a primate life form, from the primate family. And I always describe people as overly arrogant, no, overly conceited, naked apes who've become divine legends in our own mind. We think that we're gods, you know.
Mhm. Do you feel sometimes the weight of the image of leader that you have is that sometimes too big of a role for you?
I'm not a leader. All my life I've just wanted to build a
I mean,
movement.
for those people you are, for a lot of people you are.
Well, that's probably my problem is that I didn't keep that kind of control, you know, on that because I feel that everybody should be independently involved
Mm.
but I do believe there is an organic leadership where people organically get into positions. Uh, Lamia is a good example of somebody who's an organic leader. I always said, we don't need to hold people's hands. People don't need to ask, what can I do? They should just do it.
Mm. Yeah,
And we see people all over the world who do. I mean, Greta Thunberg's a good example of that, just do it, you know,
yeah.
and not to be deterred. But yeah, a lot of things that keep people from doing anything is criticism from others. So either whether it be their parents or friends or whatever, you shouldn't be deterred by the opinions of other people. If you
Mm.
have a passion, you build on that passion and you go with it. You don't care if people laugh at you. You don't care if people criticize you. That.
Yeah, you just go on. Okay, well, thank you very much, Paul.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Take care of
Okay.
you. Don't go back to, don't go on vacation in Japan.
Well, they haven't got me yet.
Sorry?
They haven't got me yet.
Yeah. Keep on the fight.
Uh,
Bye.